Hi, I'm Andy. In this series of videos, I'm making a cedar strip canoe. In this episode, I'm going to shape and fit the outer stems. My previous explanation of the outer stems has been a bit hand-wavy, so I'm going to show you this one which I've dry fitted already and how it fits onto the boat, and then talk you through the process of creating the other one. But one thing to note is that for some reason when I steam bent these stems, there was a lot of spring back. I think probably I didn't steam them long enough before I clamped them and they never fully took the shape they should have done. As a result of that, I've got these fairly large screws holding it in. I'll have them while it's being epoxied, but once the epoxy is set, I'll take those screws out and plug the holes, so they're only temporary. So this is the mortise that's cut into the planking at the top. You can see the inner stem there, and as you can see, the entire length of the outer stem is in full contact with the leading edge of the inner stem. Once the stems are both finished, I'll epoxy them into place. At that point I'll fair them in, or smooth them to match the lines of the boat. So this step will be completely gone. And in fact, at this end where it's tapered, there'll be very little left. I'll take off everything down to the surface of the boat here. And then as it comes down around the corner, it'll be tapered into the shape of the boat, leaving about 1/4 of an inch leading edge the whole way around. That leading edge eventually will be capped with a brass strip, which will run right around the stem. This is the other outer stem. It's still rough from the glue up with a lot of epoxy on the sides. So the first step is to clean that up. I find this fairly short Stanley plane an excellent plane for this job. I bought it for about £5 in a car boot sale 10 years ago or more. It took a lot of cleaning up, but it's an excellent plane now, and with the blade sharpened and straightened, it takes a very nice smooth cut. I have to smooth off the leading edge of the canoe, take off all the rough edges of the planks, right down to exactly the surface of the inner stem, which is still visible in here. That's easy at the bottom section there. I use a plane and a chisel and just smooth it down. The point at which it transitions to the mortise then is the difficult bit, and that's a point at which the width across the cut edges of the planks and the inner stem is the same width as the outer stem. My block plane from Axminster I got very recently. It's a really nice plane with an adjustable mouth, so you can get very, very fine shavings off it, and it's fully brass accessories, so it's got a good heavy weight in the hand and it rides nicely over the wood. I brought the flat face up to about this line, and at that point the width of that face is now almost exactly the same as the stem. So the first step I have to do is to work out how long I want this stem to be. Now, I foolishly didn't mark the position of the end of the inner stem, so I'm going to use a spirit level up from the bottom of the mould station and then take off about an inch, because the one thing you don't want is for the outer stem to go beyond the inner stem, because then when you cut the mortise you'll be cutting through into air and there'll be nothing underneath. I'm going to plane down the ends of the stem now to bring them down to that narrow point at the top, or the 1/4 inch thickness point at the top. To do that I'm going to use this last plane that I've been using regularly in the project. It's another vintage Stanley. This one was sold to me by a friend of mine whose workmate collects vintage planes and ended up with 2 of these. It's a bit longer than the others, it has a bit more weight, and it's fantastic for creating nice, smooth, long, flat profiles. It's a real joy to work with this one because it's been well maintained its whole life. I'm now going to scribe a line down either side of this outer stem onto the planks to show where I need to cut that mortise. I've got the heaters running and everything set up to go. The first job is to make some unthickened epoxy and use it to paint the ends of the planks where they might soak up a lot of that epoxy. And I'll paint that a few times until they stay wet, and then I'll thicken a batch of epoxy and then glue the outer stems on using that thickened epoxy. I'm going to thicken it with a filleting blend which is tinted very slightly, so it should match the cedar a little bit better than just being transparent. Smells like chocolate. I think it's just cocoa powder. Anyway, that's not very thick yet, so I'm going to add more. Okay, that's a little bit thicker, but I don't want it any darker, so I'm now going to add some of this microfiber, which is untinted. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. It's sort of like toffee sauce now. Delicious. Before putting the screws in, I'm going to dip them in this tool wax, which is soft wax polish, and it will hopefully stop the screws sticking to the epoxy. If the screws get glued in with the epoxy, I'll never get them out again, which will be a pain to deal with. These dowels are about 35mm long, so with about 5mm left proud of the surface, they go about halfway into the inner stem. The last step of the process now of attaching the outer stems is to fare them in slightly. Obviously the whole boat will be fared in the end, but I want to take down some of the larger sections of the outer stem which won't be needed before I start planing down the outside of the hull. This piece I've just cut off shows a cross section quite nicely, with the inner stem, the outer stem, and the ends of the planks landing on the back of the outer stem and supported by the sides of the inner stem. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, then please do consider subscribing to my channel, and as always, click like below and leave any comments you have. In the next episode, I'll be fairing the hull, which means smoothing it all off with a block plane and sandpaper, in preparation for putting the transparent fiberglass coating on the outside. Looking forward to seeing you then. Bye bye.